Today we're going to look at perceptions and we're going to explore some of the modern practices that are ruining people's minds and their lives. First up, inherited trauma. This weird new fad where in some strange sadistic way I decide to become a victim of something that happened to someone else. It's odd, it's taking people's power away, comes up short and ruining people's lives. Second, being offended by things. Great news here, you don't have to be offended by anything. You don't have to be that person that gets pissed off at the world because someone got their coffee order wrong. You can simply choose not to be offended. The Stoic king Marcus Aurelius said it best, and I paraphrase, if you are distressed by an external thing, it is not the thing itself that is causing you pain. It is only your perception of this thing, and this can be wiped out at a moment's notice. It's not the person getting my coffee order wrong that's pissing me off. It is me and how I choose to perceive that thing. If I choose that to be a slight on me or them being useless and all that sort of thing, then I'm gonna be pissed off. If I recognize, oh, it's just a human, they made a human mistake, it's probably very early for them, they're still waking up, it's fine, I make mistakes too, it doesn't matter. Second instance, I'm not offended. First instance, I'm a victim of someone putting almond milk in my coffee. Boo-hoo. Anyway, if you're ready for some hard truths, then buckle in. Hit the like button, the subscribe button, I don't know where that, the subscribe button, and strap in. This lesson today on perceptions is going to change how you perceive everything. It is not what happens, but how you choose to perceive what happens that determines how you feel. Now that is such an important one, I'm going to say it again. It is not what happens, but how you choose to perceive what happens that determines how you feel. If I perceive something is happening for me, then I'll perceive it as a great thing. I'll be grateful, I'll be so happy. If I perceive something as happening to me, I'm going to be a victim of it. I'm going to wish it didn't happen. I'm going to be resentful and I'm going to be miserable, all because of my perception of that thing. The same thing can be perceived differently depending on the angle from which you're observing it. If I'm over here and looking at my hand here, I'm only seeing this side of things. What I'm not seeing is this side. If you're over here and you're seeing this side, then you're seeing this, you're not seeing this. Every story has three sides. My side, your side, and the truth, which is seeing everything. If I'm only seeing this side, I'm vulnerable to whatever this side is showing. If I'm only seeing this side, and this side's all bad, I'm gonna be unhappy. I'm gonna be a victim because of what I'm seeing. If I see the whole thing, if I see all the benefits and the drawbacks and get that overview view, then I'm not gonna be a victim of it, but I'm also not gonna be chasing a fantasy. I'm gonna be balanced and objective in the way I view it and the way I carry on through life. Now, as I just mentioned, every story has three sides. My side, your side, and the truth. This is why sharing your truth is an incredibly dangerous victim reinforcing practice. Despite best intentions, this practice is ruining lives. All right, 3 examples to bring home each of these points. First, it's not what happens, but how you choose to perceive what happens that determines how you feel. So imagine you're a girl and you're sitting in a bar and you're straight. If you're not straight, don't be offended. It's just an example. Cool? So you're a straight girl sitting alone at a bar. And you know those people that look like thumbs with ears and a mouth? Well, one of those people walk into the bar. They come in, they walk all the way up to you and they sit down next to you and they say, "You are the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. Can I buy you a drink?" To which you respond, "Ew, what the hell? Get away from me, you creep. That's disgusting. Ew, gross, get away." Now, let's just run that back and we'll replace the beanbag with arms and legs with this Adonis-like creature that's a hybrid of Channing Tatum, Matthew McConaughey, Zac Efron, I don't know, whoever else girls find attractive, but this Adonis-like bloke walks in. This time he walks in, he looks at you like, "Oh my God, he's looking at me, crazy." He walks all the way in like, "Oh my God, is he walking up to me?" Sits down next to you and he said, "You are the most beautiful girl I've ever seen in my life. Can I buy you a drink?" And you just, "Oh my God, you're so charming." "Yes, of course." Now, freeze frame. The exact same thing happened in both these scenarios. Bloke walks into the bar, comes up to you, uses the exact same words, but depending on how you perceive the bloke determined your reaction. The only thing that changed your reaction was who said those words. Those words coming from Jabba the Hutt's nephew made you creeped out and disgusted. Those words coming from an Adonis-like creature made you overwhelmed and charmed and excited. Clearly, it's not the words that determined how you feel, but your perception of the environment and who said them. All right, putting a pin in that example, and we're going to dive into the next one. This one is about how you can perceive something is happening to or for you. And depending on how you perceive that determines how you feel. So, painting the scene. We've got a farmer who is struggling. He's in the middle of the drought, he's got a massive farm, his crops are struggling, he hasn't been able to water them. He's been praying for rain for weeks. It's the middle of summer, did I say that? I hope so. We've got a bride here, it's her wedding day. She's getting married on the farm, having an outdoor wedding, it's been her dream, whatever. She's praying that absolutely no rain happens, right? The farmer needs rain, she doesn't want rain for her special day. So the day comes and it starts raining. The farmer is on his knees, he's like, "Thank you God, thank you for this rain, I needed this, thank you so much, it's the best thing, thank you for doing this." The bride is on her knees being like, God, why, how could you do this to me? Why? The one day of the year I didn't want it to rain and it rained today. Why would you do this to me? This is so unfair. Why? Farmer saw the rain as a great thing. He's grateful. He's crying tears of joy. Bridezilla, that's unfair, but Bridezilla saw the rain as a terrible thing. She's like, why did you do this to me? The rain is not a good or bad thing. It wasn't out to get you. It just happened. But your perception of it happening to you made you feel terrible, like a victim, ruin the mood, ruin your day. Now, the powerful thing here is your perceptions are malleable. Asking the right questions, finding the hidden benefits, the blessings in the disguise, and helping you to see that other side allows you to go from being a victim of something to see that it happened for you. It allows you to transform something from mental baggage that's weighing you down into the fuel that helps propel you forwards. A setback can be a failure if you don't learn the lessons from it. Or alternatively, a setback can be the thing that teaches you the important lessons to learn from the experience and take a quantum leap moving forwards. It's not the thing, it's how you perceive it. All right, on to this third story. And this is a really, really important one because there's a massive narrative in society right now where we are doing this practice and it's making things worse. It is fueling this mental health epidemic. This share your truth trend and being overly sympathetic to people are creating massive ramifications in society. Firstly, sympathy is an incredibly addictive feeling. If I'm giving you sympathy, that is me reaffirming to you and rewarding you for being a victim of a story. The problem with that is your story is your side. Remember, we've got your side, their side, and the truth. You're holding on to your side, you're sharing your side, but I'm giving you sympathy and rewarding you and not seeing the full picture. Once again, because it's addicting, you're going to keep sticking to that narrative. And like most people, what you do over time is you add a bit of mayo to the story. You're like, oh, I'm getting a bit of traction with this story. I think I can spice it up. I think I can make it a bit more entertaining. So you add a bit of mayo to the story and it goes from being a small minor inconvenience into getting a worse and worse and worse thing. When you tell a story, you start becoming a victim of that story as opposed to the event because you stop remembering the event and you just remember the most recent telling of the story. So something happens, then I tell it, add some mayo to it, and this little thing just becomes this much, much, much bigger thing. And now I'm a victim of this much, much bigger thing than what actually happened. Why? Because I was addicted to sympathy. I kept getting rewarded for telling my story. So I kept telling the story, kept making it more extreme and put myself into this position. So, as I said, sympathy is one of the most addictive things in the world and it's ruining lives because it's keeping people stuck in their loop, in their narrative, in their story and being a victim of that thing. Let's just say I start a new job and I need help with something. So I ask Jacko over there to help me with this. One thing I don't know about Jacko is incredibly intelligent, but he is a bit awkward in communicating with people. He doesn't quite have that high level emotional quotient, so he's very blunt and very to the point. He means well, he's coming from a great place, but that's just how he communicates. So I asked Jacko, he's helping me solve this problem, and I'm just sitting there thinking, oh my God, this guy is so condescending. He's so rude. Why is he being so rude to me? I just asked him to help me. Pretty straight. We go into Jacko's mode. He's like, cool, I'm helping this guy. I really hope he gets it. I hope he understands it. I want to make sure I'm explaining it properly to him. And I'm going to not beat around the bush because I want to save him time. So I'm just going to give him the answers. So what we've got is me ask Jacko a question. Me not understanding who Jacko is, how he operates, perceiving him as being an asshole, negative, condescending, all that sort of stuff. Jacko being asked a question. Feels like all he's doing is helping me and just doing a good job of helping me. That's the event. Two different perceptions. I go home. I tell my wife, honey, you will not believe this asshole I have to work with. Oh my God. All I did was ask him a simple question and he was so rude and so condescending. She's like, oh, you poor thing. You shouldn't have to deal with that at work. I hope you went to speak to HR and oh, you poor thing. That sucks. That's so bad. Oh, poor you. I was like, oh, okay. I'm getting a bit of sympathy for this. Cool. I might tell this story again. So go out for some beers with the boys later that day. I'm like, boys, have I got a story for you? You'll never believe this asshole that I have to work with. Oh my goodness. And I'm putting a bit of mayo on it because the story's hitting. It's like, sick, yeah, I'm gonna build on this. So I tell that story, like, oh, you poor bugger, like you just started a new job and you already have to work with assholes. Poor you. I'm just gobbling down this sympathy. I'm loving it. All weekend, I tell this story about 20 more times and the story gets better and better and better. It's gone from this little thing into this massive, Jacko's the most evil person in the world. He's horrible, terrible, he's an asshole, da-da-da-da-da. So after spending the whole weekend telling literally every man that I know this story about how much of an evil person Jacko is and all that sort of stuff, I walk into work on Monday morning and I see Jacko. All of a sudden it's like a deer in the headlights. I feel anxiety coming on. All that sympathy and rewarding me for the story and reaffirmation of how much victim I was made this thing much bigger in my mind. Now Jacko is the most evil person in the world. Of course, when I see Jacko, the most evil person in the world, I'm going to feel scared. I'm going to feel anxious. That sympathy created my anxiety. Now, I'm not going to break down how anxiety works in this video. I've got 2 other videos for that. Check them out if you haven't yet already. They will change your relationship with anxiety. Obviously, this is an extreme example. I've sped up how this process works and what happens. But that is the process and what happens, all because we get sympathy for an event. Let's look at the other approach that we could have had. After Jacko came and helped me, I could have said, Jacko, thank you so much for helping me. Now, I'm sorry if I'm wrong here, my radar could be off, but that felt a bit condescending and rude. Like, was that a dumb question? Should I have known that? Or like, is it something up here? To which Jacko says, no. Oh, I did not mean for you to feel like that was condescending. No, that was a great question. I really love helping people. I just wanted to make sure I got straight to the point with you to save you from making these mistakes down the line. I didn't mean to be rude. I'm just very direct with when I talk about work things. So no, great question. I love that. Please feel free to come ask me any more questions. Now, obviously a bit of an uncomfortable conversation, but less uncomfortable than sharing your truth and developing anxiety. The only thing that made this situation a problem was the lack of understanding. It was me not understanding where Jacko was coming from, not understanding that situation, not understanding that he wasn't being an asshole. And then me taking my lack of understanding, sharing it with the world and being given sympathy, adding mayo to it, making it a bigger thing than it really was, and becoming a victim of this massive thing, all because I was misbalancing my perceptions. As you can see, sharing your truth has its flaws. The better alternative is understanding, finding the balance, and seeing the full picture. Now for the part I've all been waiting for, inherited trauma. This is the latest nonsensical fad that is ruining people's lives, taking away their power, and keeping them stuck in victim loops throughout their life. And might not come as a shock to you, but I've got a story to explain this. Imagine you've got a set of young twin boys. They're raised by a widowed single father who drinks a lot and struggles to express himself emotionally and relies on physical actions and movements and smacking his kids to communicate because he doesn't know how to communicate with his words. Right? So that's their childhood. They grow up with this dad. This one here grows up to become an alcoholic who doesn't know how to communicate, uses violence to try and get his messages across. He says, my dad was an abusive alcoholic, that's all I ever knew. This twin grows up to be an incredibly empathetic person. He learns how to understand people. He's great at relationships and networking. He's a loving father, loving husband, and fantastic with people. He says, my dad resorted to violence and anger because he didn't know how to communicate properly. That's all I ever knew. The exact same upbringing, but depending on how they perceived it, determined how their life played out. This one saw the dad and labeled the dad as an abusive alcoholic, was a victim of it, and became the same thing that he despised. This one decided to break the cycle, learn from his dad, and make sure that he became a better communicator, more empowered person, and loved others. He could have very easily been a victim of his upbringing like this other twin and become an abusive alcoholic, but he didn't because of how he chose to perceive it. It is not what happens, it's how we choose to perceive it that determines how we feel and how we act from there. Okay. Inherited trauma. This is a way of deflecting ownership for your perceptions and your decisions. It's an easy cop-out to say, oh, my life isn't where it wants to be, but it's not my fault. My life isn't where I want it to be because something happened to my great-great-grandmother, then you insert your made-up story here, and because that happened to her, I don't get to live the life I want to be living. So making up this story about your great-great-grandmother and giving away your power to what happened to her is like signing a contract that you are going to be a victim of this thing and stay stuck in this loop for your entire life. That's crazy, and it's stopping you from growing or evolving. By deciding to take ownership for your life and for your perceptions and recognizing that if you are experiencing any traumas, it's not anyone else's fault. It all comes down to you and your perceptions. That is the first step in taking ownership for your life. Once you've done that, then you can recognize, okay, if I'm perceiving trauma, it's because I'm only perceiving one side of the picture. Let me get a more holistic view of what happened. So I go from being a victim of it to seeing how it served and benefited me, to see the full picture so I can use this as fuel to help me keep growing instead of remaining a victim of something that happened to me 20 years ago. The problem with that and the sympathy and all that sort of stuff is you keep giving your power away. You stay a victim of that thing from 20 years ago for the next 60, 70 years. That does not have to be your reality. Taking ownership for your mind and learning to rebalance your emotions puts you in the driver's seat to grow and evolve and to see everything as being on the way, not in the way. You can begin to rebalance your emotions by questioning your perceptions, by asking yourself, what are the hidden benefits here? What were the silver linings? How did this serve me? How was this advantageous to me? What opportunities did I gain because of this? Once again, if I'm only seeing this side, I need to see this side to balance out my mind. These questions help you start seeing that side. They help you to look at it from another lens until you can see the full picture. Once you can see the other side of the coin, it's less a thing that happened to you and more something that happened for you. Now, I'm not going to go any further into that process in this video. That's coming up. I'm going to give it the attention it deserves and do a full video on it. Remember, it's not what happens, it's how you perceive what happens that determines how you feel. Perceptions are malleable. They can be changed at a moment's notice by asking some balancing questions and trying to see the other side of things. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. If you have any requests for future videos, also leave a comment. That's all for today. Make sure you've subscribed and I'll see you next time.